All right. What is up to all the Still City Insider readers and listeners? Welcome to episode number 23 of the Steelers Insider podcast. I'm here once again with Matt Cecil. Matt, how you doing today?
Great, Jeremy. How are you doing?
I'm doing well. Matt and I are here bringing you a late night edition of the podcast. Jim and I typically on at 5 a.m., but we're coming to you today. And we are going to talk defensive free agents for the Steelers, guys who they should try to re-sign. We're going to talk about some outside free agents. We're going to get into that. And this is going to help you prime for the upcoming draft, which, believe it or not, is 2 months away. Before we get into that, got some Steelers news that we need to cover. The Combine has started and happening as we speak. The wide receivers are just lighting it up with their 40 times. A kid out of Baylor ran an unofficial 4.21. Chris Olave, wide receiver out of Ohio State, ran a 4.26. They say it's the largest number of receivers in a draft class that have run under 4.4s in history of the Combine. And Matt and I were talking about this before we got on, and Matt has some expertise in this area in terms of training athletes. But this could be due to advancements in training. So Matt, I don't know if you want to speak to that as we get started here.
The first thing I thought of was these guys are getting some sleep.
Yeah.
Sleep is so important, and everybody out there should read Matt Walker's book, Why We Sleep, and, Matt Walker podcasts and what goes on in the brain when we sleep. And so these guys are running later. And I think probably for their circadian rhythms too, it's probably better for them. If you're up at midnight, 1 a.m, you're doing some type of interview and then you got to get up at 6 the next morning and they're asking you to run a 40, you're probably not going to do as well. And I think, when they go home and they work at their pro days and they get better times, it might not be a 39.5-yard track. It might just be the fact that they're getting better rest and they're better prepared physically to time better. So, yeah. I don't want to say it's surprising. Olave running a 4.26 is surprising.
Yeah.
But, that could be part of it. Who knows? It's just my guess.
Yeah. And a guy that I know we've talked about off air, Velus Jones Jr., a guy that I had mocked to the Steelers in the first of their 7th round pick. He ran a 4.31. So guys are just tearing it up. Some other Combine news, and I'm sure there's going to be a lot of coverage on the site. But Kenny Pickett, and this is annoying me, I'm sorry, but his hand size came at 8.5 inches. I get the ball security and all that jazz, but if you're going to weigh that more than somebody's heart or intelligence or football acumen, I just can't, that's irritating to me. I don't know how you feel about that, Matt, but
Mike Vick had an 8.5 inch hand too, and he could sling it like 70 yards. So,
Yeah.
I mean, can you hold on to the football? I just read today he had 38 fumbles. It's a little concerning over the course, but he had 5 seasons to play.
Right.
So he had the thumb thing where he can't stretch his hand. I don't have big hands. And I was like, what's mine? I measured it at 9 and I was like, they got to be smaller than Joe Burrow's. I think this width thing is overrated.
Yeah.
So what do they do on the field? How accurate are they? I watched Kenny Pickett run to his left and, sling it, moving to his left, throwing a dart 20, 25 yards down the field in the end zone. The guy can throw the football. Can he hold on to it? And I've compared him a little bit to Derek Carr before.
Right.
Derek Carr led the league in fumbles over the last 5-6 years. That's my only concern. I don't know. I mean, he's really my top guy at the quarterback position, but we'll get to the draft picks at some point. But I love his demeanor.
Yeah. I hope it pushes him down. I hope that pushes him down to 20, man. I'll take him. Small hands and all.
Right.
We'll take him in Pittsburgh with open arms.
For sure. Right.
So some of the other news nuggets that came out earlier this week, Kevin Colbert spoke to the media once again, and some really positive news that came out of that. He referenced Stephon Tuitt and said that it really was that knee injury that hindered him this past season and that he's optimistic that he's going to play. That's a game changer. If they don't have to worry about filling a hole on the defensive line in the draft, You could build some depth through free agency, even though a lot of the guys that got reps last year, you can count on them for depth. But really promising news around Stephon Tuitt.
Oh, that'd be huge if he can come back.
Yeah.
You know, you concern yourself with he hasn't played in a year, but the upside of that is, well, he hasn't played in a year. So maybe he's, you know, his whole body gets fresh and he's able to hold up, you know, for a full season. Whether or not, hopefully he comes back. Still a little up in the air. I would like for him to say it. And I would think as free agency approaches, they probably would get an answer by then.
Yeah.
They're going to need to, but so far, you know, it sounds promising, and that's a great thing.
Yeah. And then Colbert also talked about the quarterback class in this year's draft. And, you know, contrary to what a lot of people are talking about in the media, saying that this isn't a particularly strong class, he says that there are starters at the quarterback position. And, you know, he said that there might not be as many as in previous years, but that there's quality there. So I think they're paying very close attention to this crop of QBs, especially that top five with Willis, Pickett, Corral, Ritter, and Howell. I think they've interviewed all five of those guys at the combine. It's my thinking they have their eye on one or two of these players. But I thought that was, I guess, confirming for me, because I've been saying all along, I think they're gonna pull the trigger on a quarterback at pick 20. But to hear Colbert say that there's quality QBs here, maybe he's throwing a smoke screen. Who knows? Any thoughts on those comments?
Yeah, I like Pickett if he falls.
Mm-hmm.
With the rest of the guys, I'm a little concerned. So I was going through the last 10 drafts of quarterbacks.
Mm-hmm.
Not to say, I think there could be potentially all those 4 or 5 guys at the top.
Yeah.
It could potentially, he's right, they could potentially be starting quarterbacks. You know, but when you think of like Matt Corral, he's 6'2", 200, so he's undersized. Ritter's undersized too, and, you know, 6'3", 207, but he could put on 10 pounds. You know, and you have Willis. Well, he's got all the physical potential of, and I like what he had to say this week in terms of like, I don't know if I'm going to fit with the Steelers. That's honest. I like that.
Yeah.
You know, and he's not trying to blow smoke out there. He's being honest, and he seems like a good kid from everything that I hear. Got the athletic ability, got the big arm, but he's 6 foot tall. Eventually, he's going to have to stand in that pocket.
Yeah.
On third down. Can he see over the line? Can he throw it on time? He's taken a lot of sacks. I think when you go down the line and you look at each one of these guys under a microscope, I'm wondering if they're truly first round picks, because if you look over the last 10 years, there's been 30 first round picks and there's been 10 second round picks. Now, if it was even, maybe 15 and 15, but I think a lot of guys get pushed in the first round.
Mm-hmm.
And so some of those names that, you know, they were probably talked about, like these guys, when you go down to Jake Locker and Gabbert and Christian Ponder, Tannehill, RG3, Brandon Weeden, Blake Bortles, Manziel, Winston, Mariota, Goff, Wentz, Paxton Lynch, Trubisky, Mayfield, Josh Rosen, Jordan Love. Like, I listed them, brother.
Yeah, there's some bad memories. I remember some of those dudes.
Jake Locker. So like I'm sure everybody was high on them. I was high on Josh Rosen. I thought, hey, pocket, he gets it out on time. He's accurate, you know, and it's such a difficult position to evaluate.
Agreed.
So, you know, do they build from the trenches? I'm more along the line of building for the trenches, and that's my plan as of right now. You know, things change in as it evolves toward the draft, as we get a full perspective after the combine. A couple more names. I mean, it was Newton worth the number 1 pick? He made a Super Bowl, but he didn't win one.
Right.
You know, Andrew Luck got hurt. Kyler Murray. I'm still up in the air on Kyler Murray because I think he's more of like a gimmick quarterback at 5'10", and I don't know if he could play conventional offense.
Right.
But 6 guys, you have Deshaun Watson, Mahomes, Josh Allen, Lamar Jackson, Burrow and Herbert are your 6 out of 10 or 11 years so far. And
Yeah.
that's about a 30%, you're hitting 300.
Yeah.
So I think a lot of those guys too that were successful had pieces around them,
Right. And how much is that? And Matt, I've talked about that too, how difficult of a position it is to evaluate and how guys get selected early. That I think Trubisky was second overall and he didn't go on to do anything, though he's being heavily connected to the Steelers and free agency this offseason. But how much of it? Yeah, I don't know how much support I am of that, but
I know
how much of drafting a quarterback is it fit? Is it the support within the organization? Is it the coaching? Is it the, everything? Like if you look at the Senior Bowl, when the entire Steelers brass was there looking at these guys, like how much can you put stock into, you bring a guy in and let's say that it's, not a strong franchise. And if the supports aren't there, could a guy like, let's say Mitchell Trubisky, just for example, I'm just using him as a hypothetical. Right. If he came into the Steelers organization and had all of that support, just the history, the alumni connections there, the coaching, the training, is it a different result? Because I
think it could be.
Yeah.
So I think a lot of it is where you go, the coaches that you have, the system that's in place. I'm a huge fan of the Shanahan system. I've been writing about it for a while, mostly because, all right, so this is what I've done too lately with a little bit of extra free time at night. I went back in YouTube and I looked at 94 Steeler games, 2004, 2005, Ben's first couple of years. And for several years, I wrote about too that I think Ben could have been the best play action quarterback, the game's ever seen. I look at those games in 2004 and 5, and I'm like, I was a little wrong in that because he was good at it, but he wasn't that great at it. They ran play action, but not as much as I thought. Maybe because I watched that Indianapolis Colts game in 2005 in the playoffs, and they ran it a lot early, and that got them out to a 14-0 lead. But when you run it, and then I think if you have that, you look at Garoppolo and you look at Tannehill, and you look at what Tannehill did, where he didn't do in Miami, and then you put him in the right situation in Tennessee. When he's running that drift route of when you got the inside and outside zone, and you're running that basically a crossing route, it's a very easy completion to make. Receivers catching it on the run. Now you're getting big chunk plays. And if you're getting the big chunk plays off play action, you can win. I just think quarterback, I'm not saying it's overrated. Don't get me wrong. It's important, but I think people we underestimate that an average quarterback can win Super Bowls. And then once they become an average quarterback winning Super Bowls, we don't label them an average quarterback anymore. People thought Russell Wilson was a game manager, just like they thought Ben was. And then they won Super Bowls and they wanted to put more on their plate. I don't think they had to put more on their plate. I just think that a lot of it is system. Yeah. And if I would love to see the Steelers, a modern day 2004 or 5 Steelers, running the ball, embracing getting to 3rd and 3 and 3rd and 4. When they had Neil O'Donnell in 95, you couldn't stop them on 3rd down. And he was definitely a game manager, very average quarterback. But you put him in 3rd and 4, 3rd and 5, that ball was coming out quick to Andre Hastings or Thigpen or Mills. It was out, and you couldn't stop it. If you have the right system in place, I think guys can be productive. Yeah. And so I would love to see them get back to running the ball, controlling the line of scrimmage. I think it's a little bit soft of a mentality to say, hey, we have to have a franchise quarterback in order to win a Super Bowl. No, we can run the ball. We're going to convert 3rd down. We're going to protect the ball. We're going to play great defense, and we're going to beat you. Yeah. And I think there's potential for guys, whether it's Pickett, because I don't think any of these guys are Josh Allen, but whether it's Pickett or maybe somebody else like Ritter, there's potential there, or a guy off like Trubisky. That's why I like him at 6'2", 220 with the mobility and the run of bootleg left, bootleg right, run that drift route across the middle and run play action, and then have a great system in 3rd down in place. And and control the clock and hit big plays.
Yeah. I mean, that's a good perspective to have too. I mean, I definitely feel like the Steelers are going to have to build their offense around that concept regardless this year, because you're not going to have a guy who's going to come in there and put the team on his shoulders and throw it 40 times a game. That's not going to happen.
Right.
We're going to have to, the offense is Najee Harris. And then you've got to
draft him, right?
Yeah. You got to convert those like you said, 3rd and 3s, 3rd and 4s. That's got to be the style of football, at least for this year. But one more thing here from Colbert, and then we'll jump into the Steelers defensive free agents. Yeah. He did talk about Zach Banner and Kevin Dotson, which I thought was pretty interesting. He said that they need more from both of those guys this year, acknowledged the fact that they had injuries, but said at the same time, they need more. So I feel like that was the shot across the bow to both Dotson and Banner, saying, hey, you got to step it up this season. Your take on that comment from Colbert?
Well, I like Dotson after the first year. I think, it was, even though he was well built, maybe he wasn't in condition. There was some comments going into training camp about him not being ready. So good. I'm glad he put that out there and put the challenge out there. Banner, maybe he should breathe a sigh of relief. I don't know, because I thought maybe he'd be cut potential, but maybe by saying that, they're going to keep him around. Banner talked a good game in terms of leadership and being passionate but he got awfully quiet. He was dealing with that knee all year, and you didn't hear from him. Mm-hmm. And so I thought, well, maybe, that maybe they're not going to bring him back this year. If they do, cool. I guess they're not going to maybe then address the right tackle position in free agency.
Yeah.
Kind of think they should with something a little bit more reliable, but they know if he's in shape.
Yeah.
And he's in shape right now and he's working and they see the progress, then I'm okay with that.
Yeah. Yeah. Interesting. Big year, big off season for both of those guys. And, before we get into the defensive free agents, I know we talked about the offensive free agents last year and potentially some outside free agents the team could look at. And I know we wanted to talk about Mason Cole at center. And so I wanted to give you an opportunity to kind of riff on that potential sign.
Because we mentioned in the last podcast that we were going to mention something about or talk about center. And, I had said in a piece that I wrote something about Matt Paradis, and you brought up Mason Cole, and I thought that was a way better fit.
Yeah.
So I wanted to at least kind of talk about that because he can play guard or center. And if Green comes around at center and maybe you hold off on signing a big name free agent at guard, which I think they should do. I can get into that a little bit later. But he could play guard then. He can play all three inside positions. So at 6'5", 296, and, he played with Minnesota last year playing the inside outside zone, which I think, seeing Matt Canada's offense before, ran a lot of inside zone. I'd like to see inside and outside zone with that power gap scheme and being versatile where they line up in different gaps along the line of scrimmage defensively, and you counter with it in your running game. And so that's what I hope to see. Yeah. And I think he would fit that. I know at Michigan he played left tackle even, but he was by far and away their best offensive lineman his senior year. And I thought he was going to be much more successful professionally than he has been so far. So maybe a fit for him.
Yeah. And he's one of those sneaky names that it's a typical Steeler signing. You don't know too much about him, but they were steady in their previous role. They come on to the team. I think of like a Jeff Hardings back in the day, and he played in Detroit there. So he's definitely a name to keep an eye on.
That's great call on your part. Yeah, I love that.
Free agency wears on here, but let's talk about it. Steelers defensive free agents. I think there's 4 guys that really we're going to spend the bulk of our time talking about. It's Terrell Edmonds at the safety position, strong safety alongside Mika Fitzpatrick. It's Kello Witherspoon at the cornerback position, Joe Hayden. There's got to be a decision made there. And then Montravius Adams. So, if we want to start from the top, work our way down, we'll kind of pitch and catch here.
Okay. Yeah, let's start with Edmonds because I think he's the number 1 guy on the list to bring back. maybe Juju's number 2, but Edmonds, I mean, you look around the league, and I wrote about that guys like Keanu Neal and Marcus May and Jordan Whitehead, they couldn't stay healthy.
Yeah.
So you want somebody reliable. If you bring Edmonds back, there's a potential there for Fitzpatrick and him to play together for 5, 6, 7 years. That's invaluable.
Yeah.
My concern is he played really well at the end of the year. He contained Mark Andrews pretty well when he was asked to cover him one-on-one a little bit in that last game they played against Baltimore. And is that going to be on tape for other teams to offer him a little bit more money than the Steelers were willing to offer? I'm hoping a 3-year deal somewhere in the neighborhood of, 5 would be lucky, but you get 6 or 7 million. I hope that they're willing to pay 3 years, 21 million, whatever the signing bonus may be. But I'd love to see him back.
Yeah.
You want to keep your draft picks like we mentioned before.
Yeah. I just think that the thing for me there, which I think the Steelers have this in the back of their mind, is that if you let him walk, you're not going to draft a guy and bring him in and start. I think that's a terrible move. And I don't think that they would do that, especially at the safety position. So that means you're going to go and sign a free agent that you feel is of equal or greater value, which I don't think the safety market is great. Why wouldn't you stick with this guy you've invested all these resources in so far, who has chemistry with Fitzpatrick and the rest of that defense? I think, like you said, this is probably the most important signing for this team this offseason.
100%. And I last year my number 1 guy was Cam Sutton. I think this year it's Edmonds, and I'm hoping we get the same success where the Steelers organization feels the same way, and they bring him back pretty early.
It almost reminds me of how it took a long time for Bud Dupree to develop, and now Edmonds hasn't been that explosive as Dupree was in those big years. Or even going back to Jason Worlds, it took him a long time.
Right.
But you can't. Why draft these guys and develop them if you're just going to let them get away? So I'm right there with you. You got to get him.
He works
back.
hard.
He does. He does. And he's football pedigree. His brothers, I think his brother is still with the Steelers practice squad guy, right? Yeah. So maybe they offer him. Maybe that's part of an incentive. Hey, I'll sign, but you got to keep my brother around. That seems to be like a whole family tradition there with Pittsburgh, with the Watt brothers. And
and you can keep so many guys in the practice squad now. Why not keep him? He's a good special teams player.
Why not? And then let's go to cornerback. Let's talk Akella Witherspoon and then Joe Hayden.
Yeah. I think we're in agreement. We'd like to see Witherspoon come back, maybe on a 2-year deal.
Yeah.
Somewhere between 8 and 10 million. But Witherspoon, he played well at the end of the year, and the numbers, I think his passer rating against was something like 22 point something. He doesn't price himself out of the market. We'll see what happens in terms of other teams. And it's so difficult to guess, all right, if you don't bring him back or Joe Hayden back, who would they sign? And, I just think he's the best guy. He's been a year in the system.
Yeah.
They traded for him for a reason. Let's not just give away 5th round picks every year and not get anything back in return the following year. I'd like to see him come back. And I think with Joe Hayden, it reminds me of, not this drastic, but I remember in 2002 thinking Dwayne Washington's done. And, they brought him back for another year, and it was not a good year.
Yeah. And
I don't think he's done. Joe Hayden's a little bit different pedigree, but there's a little slippage there.
Yeah.
You're at this point, we're going to ask him to bring him back to be the 3rd guy, maybe the 4th guy.
Yeah.
I don't think that really fits. Maybe he wants to find a better, Super Bowl opportunity. I think Witherspoon's the guy.
Yep. I'd agree. So this is crazy. And this is how sick I am. I had a nightmare last night, and this is a true story, that Justin Lane was starting opposite Cam Sutton. I swear to God, that was my dream. And he was just getting
That's awesome.
Like, oh my God, what did they do?
That is fantastic.
Yeah.
I have strange Steeler dreams.
Yeah.
I'll have to share them the next time I have one.
Yeah. And it just came to me. I'm like, oh, I remember that last night. But
that is frightening.
It's very frightening.
Nightmare.
Yeah. But they have to, I feel like they do have to make a strong push to re-sign Witherspoon.
Yeah.
I don't think it's going to happen though. I think he's going to be looking elsewhere. I think he's going to command a bigger dollar than what we can offer, and they're going to have to find some type of answer. It can't be through the draft. They can't draft corners. Yeah, you could say that maybe they've learned, but their track record is not, it's not good. So they've got to go through free agency. Again, if you have a guy on the roster who stepped up last year, give him a full year in the system, OTAs, mini camps, training camp, it just makes sense to sign Witherspoon. And then in terms of Hayden, if you can keep him around, 1-year deal, something cheap, just as a veteran presence.
I love him.
Yeah. I mean, I would try to do that, but you can't, he's got to take a discount, which whether he's willing to do that, but Witherspoon, I wouldn't be surprised he signs like Baltimore or something.
Well, the only saving grace there is, the other teams had opportunities to sign him, and he signed a 1-year deal with Seattle, and then Seattle didn't want him. And
yeah,
for whatever reason, there's less value than what we see after we saw him with 3 or 4 games with the Steelers. I think maybe hopefully, just playing devil's advocate to what you're saying, because I'm hoping he doesn't leave, that maybe just being in this system and having some success, and the offers are fairly similar. And the Steelers got money under the salary cap to, not that they're going to overpay him. That's not what they do. But I don't know if anybody overpays him with other guys like Dante Jackson out there and J.C. Jackson and other cornerbacks that are potential free agents. Maybe we do something down the road about guys that get released before, because if James Bradbury's out there, it's somebody bringing into the equation to see how much you have to pay him. Yeah. It's just going to be interesting. I think there's better players, hopefully, that other teams value that, and we can keep Witherspoon.
Yeah. I wonder, and I was sitting here thinking as we're talking, how much the promotion of Terrell Austin and then the hiring of Flores will have, and maybe retaining some of these guys, because you're talking 2 great defensive minds. Austin, coach, wasn't he a cornerbacks coach, secondary coach?
Austin, yeah.
Yeah. So, maybe that has a hand in keeping him around. I'm hoping, maybe I'm grasping for straws here, but
sure. Well, he had a lot of success here and with Austin, so maybe he realizes it's a good fit for him.
Yeah. Yeah.
So I hope you're right about that.
Yeah. And then the last guy, Montravius Adams, they signed off New Orleans Saints practice squad, brought in when they were really hurting on that defensive line, and stepped in and played well, flashed a little bit. He's not the big space eater. He's not he's not big snack by any chance, but he's got a great burst off the field. Brings you something a little different, can get in the backfield, be disruptive. They got to resign him too.
Yeah, I think you bring him back. I mean, minimum deal.
Yeah.
They got to stop the run. So I don't know how much he helps you there, but I do like his burst. Like you said, it's visible, and he hustles down the field, and he's a good athlete for a man his size. So absolutely bring him back. And I thought even bringing Taco Charlton back in a 1-year minimum deals, possibly your 4th guy, would be wise too. Look, when he came out in the draft, I was shocked. I watched a lot of Michigan games that he was a 1st-round pick. To me, he looked like a 3rd, 4th round, and I think that's what he is.
Yeah.
He doesn't have the burst, but he's got some size to be able to either collapse the pocket or set the edge in the run game.
Yeah.
And as a 4th guy coming in, you learn the system. You don't have the expectation of him being a 1st-round pick. Maybe he develops a role there.
Yeah.
So him and Killebrew for special teams. Those are the guys that I think bring back defensively if you can. Minimum salaries there.
Yeah. And Charlton has nice length. I mean, there were a few plays last year where he batted down the footballs.
Right.
And listeners, I swear Matt and I didn't conspire prior to coming on here saying, all right, we're going to agree on everything. So we just happen to have similar mindsets here to these free agents. So
absolutely.
But in terms of outside free agents, Matt, on the defensive side of the football, I haven't done a ton of homework there. I've really been focusing on the offensive side of the football.
Yeah.
But do you want to speak to any guys you see out there as being good fits for this team? I know that.
Well, let's start with the defensive line, because if Tua comes back, I do think they should get young and draft there, and have the older players mentor somebody. Let's say they don't. Let's say maybe they sign a guy like Foley Fatakasi, the nose tackle type, 6'4", 318 pounds from the New York Jets.
Okay.
Sebastian Joseph Day. These are nose tackle types that are also 6'4", that can possibly play, in dime or nickel and sub package. And I mean, that's a possibility. I highly doubt that, so I don't want to spend too much time on that.
Yeah.
I thought about an outside linebacker that would be more willing, because I don't think they're going to draft one in the first 3 rounds. Somebody that's more willing than Melvin Ingram, and Roy Countryman wrote about that. I thought that this is a good touch on his part. Is Whitney Merciless would be somebody that I think would be more accepting of being a third outside linebacker. And if you had, Charlton and Dan, what's his last?
Derek Tuska.
Tuska. Yeah, him
he
and
came
Charlton
on a little bit there at the end of the year.
Yeah. No, they did some nice things, him and Charlton, for where they came from and late in the year. So I'm okay there. As far as inside linebacker, I think this is where things get a little interesting. You bring in Flores, and does he go after Dante Hightower? Might be 2 years past where he'd be more of a option, but you never know for a year or two. Some guys that I mentioned Vander Esch in my piece. I don't know if he's physical enough. AJ Johnson coming off of a pec tear, but really physical, 6'2", 255. What's the deal for him going to be? He's 30 years old. I think when I'm looking at inside linebacker, here's two spots that I'm looking at for maybe value. Is Rashaan Evans, who they were going to draft, or Jerry Dulac had once tweeted that he's the pick at 28 if he falls there. And so he fell out of favor with the Titans. But what is that position, Jeremy? Because it's not really 100. You don't play 100% of the time. They ideally want Devin Bush to play there. Yes. So what percentage of snaps, and then how do you pay somebody? Vander Esch, do you pay him $7 or $8 million a year if he's only going to play 2/3 of the snaps?
Right.
Or maybe Evans is the better fit there, where he's only getting paid anywhere from $3 or $4 million a season for a couple years. So I'd be good just with about any of those guys. And then Jaron Curse is somebody I mentioned at 6'4", 222, had a really good season. If they don't bring back Edmonds, hopefully they do, but somebody that maybe that they would fill in at their price tag from between 5 or 6 or $5 and $7 million a year at strong safety. And then hopefully that's not the case, but then the name I wanted to bring up too for dime linebacker, they really missed Mike Hilton last year.
Yeah, I agree.
Because even though he looks like a corner or a slot corner, he's really a modern day version of a linebacker against 3 wide receiver sets. And he does a lot of blitzing, and he's critical in the run game and pressuring the quarterback. Now, they had interest in Jabril Peppers back in 2017, and he's coming off of ACL. Now, you can sign him possibly to a 1-year prove-it deal, let's say a couple million, maybe, I don't know, maybe a little bit less. I don't think it's going to be a vet minimum, but he fits what they want to do out of that position. So being physical, being more of a linebacker, you worry about his coverage after a knee injury, but blitzing, I think you bring in somebody like him and Rashad Evans and pair them and bring back the guys that you have, draft young at defensive tackle or nose tackle or DN, and we're off and running.
Yeah.
That's kind of what I'm looking at.
Yeah, you make some interesting points about the middle linebacker position, and you're not playing 100% of the snaps. So what type of value do you put on signing a guy there?
Right.
And then I wonder too, what do they have in Buddy Johnson? Because Bush by all accounts, I think Colbert spoke to this a few weeks ago, they're giving him that opportunity to show that it was the knee, but he's got to play better. And he's more of that movement linebacker, the sideline. They need that buck guy who's going to come in.
Right.
So with Van Der Esch, I think he's more Bush than he is.
Even though he's 255, he's still a little bit more Bush. A
little bit more finesse. Yep. Yeah. Evans is probably a bit more physical, but you have him Buddy Johnson, a fourth
Buddy
round.
From what they've indicated has been backing up Bush. So I think he's that run and chase. He's not really a stack and shed dude. So you let him develop. And then maybe if Bush doesn't work out in year 3, he's been in the system 2 years, he can step in and hopefully maybe you have improvement or you don't have much a drop off. But I think, we've said this before, you got to let your in-house guys develop.
Yeah.
You got to give Bush an opportunity to come back from that knee injury. He flashed as a rookie. And then you got to see what Johnson can give you. And then, you have to be a little bit patient with your guys, kind of like Green at center. And I'm not going to give up on him like we talked about, but bring somebody in to compete. And in case it's not working out, you got a solid guy that can play there.
Right.
But you don't want to break the bank for that position and find out, well, now Green is made a huge step in year 2. So I think same thing with inside linebacker. So just bringing guys in for certain roles, maybe like Evans and Peppers, where you don't pigeonhole yourself in the draft, because I think round 3 is the ideal position to draft those specialists.
Yeah.
Whether it's a slot guy like Marcus Jones, if he's there, can play that, and then you only paid Peppers, you only brought him in for a year, and maybe he is the man, and maybe Jones can play somewhere else, but you don't handcuff yourself in the draft. And same thing at linebacker. I don't think Muma is going to fall at round 3, but you sign Evans, and if somebody's really good there round 3, that's an inside linebacker, and he's best player on your board, you're able to take him.
Yeah.
So that's kind of what I'm looking at for those rounds.
Yeah, a lot of times though too, like I know you said that Muma won't fall to them, but and it and I know it, that their players are like, there's no way they're falling. Then you get to rounds 2 and 3 of the draft, and you're like, how's this guy still here?
I know.
Still on the board. So it's so hard to tell, before it's all said and done. Those 5 quarterbacks we talked about, they may sneak into the picks 1 through 25, and then it's a completely different draft board. But
I think one of those guys is going to be there around 2. I just think one of them will be there.
Yeah.
I think they're all really tight. I mean, Sam Howell, I didn't mention him, but he struggles with getting the ball out. I watched some games in the pocket presence and maybe taking sacks that he's shown it. They're all projects in their own way.
Yep. For Howell, whenever I watched the Senior Bowl, that's one of the things that stood out to me, is that he his pocket awareness and tapping, and he got settled as the game went on, but that scares me. That scares me a lot.
Yeah. And I want accuracy, pocket awareness. Accuracy, you made a great point with Ritter, that can be developed because we saw it with Josh Allen, but and all this stuff can be developed, but really, I mean, that pocket presence of being aware of where to slide and buy extra time and step up. Some guys just run right to the right and they run into trouble. And those are the red flags. I don't want the guys that don't have pocket awareness.
That's Mason Rudolph, man.
Yeah, Rudolph a little bit. Yeah. With him, it's more like the clock going off in his head.
Yeah.
He just holds that ball way too long. It's like, dude, you're going to turn it over, man. You got to get rid of it.
So his hands are bigger than 8.5 inches.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Awesome. Well, hey, Matt, great analysis, great insight. Thank you so much. This was great talking Steelers football with you. Exciting time of the year. Going to be a lot to talk about with the combine. Free agency kicks off here in a few weeks. You don't have a social media handle. You call it the depression box or whatever. So I can't give you
the depression device, the addiction
depression device.
Yeah.
So you can't follow Matt on.
Not yet.
But check out his work on the Steel City Insider.
Yeah.
It's great. You can check out my work at thestillstudy.com. Give me a follow at Still Study. I think Jim is going to be back next week. We may have a special guest on the show, but Matt and I will be hopefully connecting and doing more of these moving forward. Give us a like on YouTube, subscribe, share, leave us a comment. We'd love to hear your feedback. But until then, have a great week. Matt, have a great week too, man. I'll talk to you soon.
Thank you, Jeremy. You as well, buddy. Take care.
All right, take it easy.